Okay, get this. Imagine a company that started by selling opium in colonial India, like back in the day, and then they go on to build India's first steel plant,
Yeah,
like defying British experts who said it was impossible, you know?
right.
And now they own like huge brands, Jaguar Land Rover, Tetley Tea. Oh, and they run this crazy luxurious hotel where a suite can cost you like $20,000 a night.
Wow.
It's the Tata Group. Their story is wild. We're about to take a deep dive over 150 years of business history from colonial India to like the global stage.
It's a journey that really mirrors India's own path to becoming a global powerhouse. And what's fascinating to me is how this single-family business turned into this massive conglomerate.
Mhm.
And their approach to philanthropy is unique, really unique. We're in for some twists and turns, that's for sure.
Okay, so rewind to the beginning. It's 1839, colonial India. We've got Jamsetji Tata, born into a family of Parsi priests. The Parsi community was small but very influential in business and philanthropy at the time. But Jamsetji's father, he breaks with tradition, becomes a businessman. Do you think that entrepreneurial spirit like set the stage for the Tata Empire?
Absolutely. It was a pivotal decision. I mean, you have to remember the context, right? The British colonial system, it was designed to make it incredibly difficult for any Indian entrepreneur to succeed.
Yeah.
Limited access to capital, facing discrimination, constantly competing with British companies that were getting preferential treatment. So yeah, starting a business, any business back then, was a bold move.
So Jamsetji, he doesn't just dip his toes in, right? He's got these huge ambitions. He wants to see India industrialized, modernized, a world-class steel plant, a premier science institute, hydroelectric power. These were dreams, dreams that even the British dismissed as impossible for India at that time.
He wasn't just dreaming, though. He was taking action. He started by buying a failing oil mill, turned it into a profitable cotton mill, and then he established the Empress mills using the latest technology, implemented these progressive labor practices like shorter working hours and better conditions for the workers.
He was way ahead of his time on that. That's amazing. And he famously said, and I love this quote, "In a free enterprise, the community is not just another stakeholder in business, but is in fact the very purpose of its existence."
His stakeholder approach was groundbreaking. And he didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk, right? He provided worker benefits, set aside funds for a technical education institution, and built the Taj Mahal Hotel, the first building in Bombay to use electricity in response to, discriminatory practices that he faced at other places. The Taj wasn't just about luxury. It was a statement. India could compete on the world stage.
I mean, the Taj, legendary, right? I've always wanted to stay there. It's amazing to see how he was pushing boundaries, building this foundation for this future business empire. Sadly, he died in 1904 with many of his dreams unrealized. But he passed the torch, or rather the blueprints, to his sons, Dorabji and Ratanji. They inherited a business, but also a legacy, a set of goals they were determined to achieve. What was the biggest challenge?
I mean, honestly, financing a massive steel plant in a colonial economy, that's no easy feat.
Right.
But Dorabji did something incredible. He turned to the Indian public for funding.
And they believed in the vision.
Absolutely. The Tata Iron and Steel Company stock issue. Oversubscribed. It was more than just investing in a company. It was about national pride, proving India could industrialize.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So they built Tata Steel, and in 1912, it becomes the largest steel plant in the entire British Empire. And they also completed that hydroelectric power project, bringing electricity to Bombay.
It's remarkable, achieving all of this amidst colonial restrictions, right? Did they ever have to compromise their values to navigate that complex political landscape?
Not that I'm aware of. I think they really understood that to succeed, they had to be master strategists, adept at navigating the complexities of the colonial system, while also laying the groundwork for a future independent India.
Wow.
And on the philanthropic side, they brought their father's vision for the Indian Institute of Science to life in 1911. They even established their own charitable trusts, continuing that legacy of giving back.
They were juggling a lot.
They diversified, they got into insurance, soap manufacturing. The Tata Group was becoming this multifaceted force in India. But then, enter JRD Tata in 1938. He led the group for a whopping 53 years, a period that included World War II, India's independence. What was his leadership style like, especially compared to his predecessors?
JRD, well, he was a different breed of leader.
Right.
Visionary and a pragmatist. Knew how to adapt. He was also a pilot, which I find fascinating. And under his leadership, Tata Aviation Service, which later became Air India, it it took flight. It seems symbolic of his approach to business, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. So he takes over right before World War II, and the Tata companies play a vital role in the Allied war effort. But then comes independence, and India adopts this socialist model, heavy government regulation, the infamous license Raj.
Right.
What impact did this have on businesses like the Tatas?
The license Raj, that was a period of intense government control over the economy. Businesses needed permission to operate, to expand, even to change their production lines. You can imagine it stifled innovation, entrepreneurship, but the Tatas, they found ways to thrive, resilient as ever.
How did they manage? Was it just a matter of waiting it out?
I think they focused on quality, efficiency, and innovation within their existing businesses. They had to adapt to the realities of the license Raj while still pushing forward. And during this period, something incredible happens. 1968, Tata Consultancy Services, TCS, it's born.
TCS, wow. That's a name everyone knows today.
Right.
But it started as an in-house service for other Tata companies.
Exactly.
To think they were laying the groundwork for what would become India's software giant, a global powerhouse in IT services. Talk about foresight.
They were ahead of the curve, weren't they?
It seems like JRD was always looking ahead, not just navigating the present, you know?
Absolutely. He was also deeply committed to social responsibility, expanding their philanthropic work, pioneering corporate governance reforms, a code of conduct, employee welfare programs, all way before they became commonplace. He understood that true success wasn't just about profit. It was about building a sustainable, ethical business that served the community. And he was a master at identifying and nurturing future leaders, those who would go on to shape the Tata Group.
By the late 1980s, India is ready for change. The license Raj has run its course. And in 1991, India embarks on economic liberalization, opening up to the world. JRD steps down, and Ratan Tata takes the helm. This feels like a turning point, a whole new era for the Tatas. What was the mood like? Was there a sense of excitement, apprehension, or both?
I think it was a mix, honestly. Definitely a sense of possibility with India opening up. It's also uncertainty. What would this new global landscape mean for the Tata Group? Ratan Tata, he seemed like a quieter leader compared to his predecessors, right? But he was about to step into the spotlight and reshape the group for the 21st century. But that's a story for part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready for the next chapter. We've gone from opium to steel to hydroelectric power to the birth of a tech giant. This is just the beginning of the Tata story. I can't wait to see where it goes next. All right, we're back, and things are about to get interesting.
Yeah.
We left off with Ratan Tata taking charge in 1991, right as India was going through these massive changes with economic liberalization. Imagine decades of the license Raj, the government had a hand in almost every business decision, and then suddenly, boom, the market opens up. It was
Right.
a whole new ballgame.
Yeah.
What were some of the immediate, the most pressing challenges Ratan Tata faced?
Well, it was this incredible mix of opportunity, but also huge challenges, right? I mean, internally, the group was this almost like a sprawling banyan tree with nearly 100 different companies.
All right.
And many of them were led by these, powerful figures who were used to a lot of autonomy under JRD's leadership.
Right.
So Ratan Tata had to unify this diverse empire, but also prepare it for a globalized marketplace.
So not just external pressures, but also a lot of internal dynamics to navigate.
Absolutely.
How did his leadership style differ from his predecessors in tackling these hurdles?
Ratan Tata, he had this reputation as a quiet leader, but actually he was quite decisive. He had this very methodical, I'd almost say surgical, approach to transforming the Tata Group. His vision was threefold: streamline the organization, modernize operations to meet global standards, and crucially, make the Tata Group a truly multinational force.
That's a big to-do list.
It is.
Streamlining a conglomerate like that can't be easy. Did he face any pushback, any resistance he had to overcome?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, streamlining meant making some tough decisions. And one of the most dramatic was, what some call the palace coup.
Oh, okay.
Ratan Tata started replacing the old guard at some of the most iconic Tata companies, right? We're talking Tata Steel, Tata Chemicals, even the legendary Indian hotels.
Right.
These weren't just executives. These were legends of Indian business. They were deeply entrenched in the company culture.
So he wasn't afraid to ruffle some feathers.
Not at all.
What was the thinking behind such a bold move?
He understood that to compete on a global scale, the group needed fresh perspectives. They needed agility. They needed a unified strategic vision. He was essentially clearing the path for a new generation of leaders, right? Those who could navigate this, the complexities of a globalized marketplace.
It takes a certain kind of leader to make changes that drastic, especially in a company with such a long and revered history. It seems like he was balancing respect for the past with a very clear-eyed view of the future. Did this streamlining extend beyond just leadership changes?
Oh, absolutely. Ratan Tata was also strategically divesting from underperforming businesses. He recognized that focus was key, so he sharpened the group's efforts on sectors with huge potential. Information technology, telecom, automobiles. He was laying the groundwork for the Tata Group we know today.
This is where we see the genius of establishing TCS back in 1968, right?
Yeah.
Did Ratan Tata foresee the potential of this IT boom that was about to happen and then leverage TCS to really capitalize on it?
Absolutely. Under his leadership, TCS went from, an in-house service provider to a global IT powerhouse.
Wow.
They invested heavily in training. They stayed ahead of the technological curve. They built this global reputation for quality and expertise. And they were winning major international clients. They became a true force in the industry.
That culminated in that landmark IPO of TCS in 2004, the largest India had ever seen at that point. Was that a deliberate strategy to signal, Tata's arrival on the global stage?
Yeah. I mean, it was a statement to the world that Indian companies, and specifically the Tata Group, were ready to compete and win on a global scale. And their success wasn't limited to just IT. Tata Motors, they were known for their sturdy trucks, their commercial vehicles.
Right.
They were evolving too under Ratan Tata.
Right. Tata Motors ventured into the passenger car market with the Tata Indica. I remember that being a pretty big deal.
It was.
What was the thinking behind that?
The Indica was a symbol of Tata's ambition. It was aimed squarely at the burgeoning Indian middle class, a segment that was increasingly aspirational, looking for affordable, reliable vehicles.
Yeah.
So it was a bold move to challenge those established foreign players in a very competitive market.
And it paid off, didn't it? The Indica was a hit. It proved that Tata Motors could compete head-to-head with these global giants. It's almost like Ratan Tata had this knack for anticipating these market trends and positioning the Tata Group to capitalize on them. But he wasn't content with just dominating the Indian market, was he?
No. Ratan Tata had global ambitions, and he pursued them with this series of, I'd say audacious acquisitions. This wasn't just about expanding the Tata portfolio. This was about acquiring iconic brands and making a statement to the world.
This is where the shopping spree begins.
Exactly.
I remember reading about these acquisitions, and it felt like every other week Tata was acquiring another global brand. Let's start with Tetley Tea. That's a British institution.
It is.
What was the thinking behind that acquisition in 2000?
Well, the Tetley acquisition was a very shrewd move. It gave Tata Tea, which was already a major player in India, a foothold in the global tea market.
Yeah.
And it was also kind of a symbolic victory, right? A company from formerly colonized India acquiring this beloved British brand. It demonstrated Tata's global aspirations and their financial muscle.
It was a sign of things to come. Then in 2004, they acquire Daewoo's heavy vehicles unit, further solidifying their position in the commercial vehicles market. But the big one, the one that really, I think, shook the world, was the acquisition of the Anglo-Dutch steelmaker Chorus Group in 2007, a $12 billion deal.
Yeah.
That must have sent shockwaves through the global business community.
Oh, absolutely. It was a defining moment. A company from India, a country that was often associated with outsourcing and low-cost manufacturing, was acquiring this major European steelmaker with a very long, storied history. It signaled that the balance of power was shifting. India was emerging as a serious player on the global stage.
And then, just a year later, they acquired Jaguar Land Rover from Ford, another iconic British brand.
These acquisitions, they were more than just business deals, weren't they? They were statements of intent.
Exactly. Ratan Tata wasn't simply building a business empire. He was crafting a narrative, a story of India's rise as a global economic powerhouse. He was showing the world that Indian companies could compete and win at the highest levels.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it?
No.
This rapid global expansion must have come with some inherent risks, some challenges, not to mention the timing of some of these acquisitions right before the global financial crisis hit in 2008.
Yeah, there were definitely bumps in the road. The Chorus acquisition in particular faced some significant challenges. The global steel market was very volatile, and integrating such a large, complex organization proved more difficult than they anticipated. And then, of course, there was the Tata Nano.
The Nano, the people's car. What was the vision behind that project, and why didn't it quite take off the way many had predicted? Well, the Tata Nano, it was a bold idea. The goal was to create the world's cheapest car, right? Priced around $2,000, to make car ownership accessible to millions in India.
Right.
It was a noble vision. But the project faced a series of challenges, everything from production delays to safety concerns to marketing missteps.
Even visionaries experience setbacks. It seems like a valuable lesson that even with the best of intentions, the most meticulous planning, the unpredictable nature of markets and consumer behavior can disrupt even the most ambitious plans.
Absolutely. It highlights the inherent risk-taking involved in innovation and entrepreneurship, even for a company as established and resourceful as the Tata Group. But despite these challenges, Ratan Tata remained committed to the core values that had defined the Tata Group for over a century.
Those values, ethical leadership, long-term thinking, a deep commitment to social responsibility, they seem woven into the fabric of the Tata Group. Did Ratan Tata actively reinforce these values during his tenure as chairman?
He did. He strengthened the Tata Code of Conduct, formalizing the group's commitment to ethical business practices. He expanded their philanthropic activities, really demonstrating that their success wasn't just measured in profits, it was measured in their contribution to society as well.
And despite the setbacks, his tenure was marked by incredible growth. When he retired in 2012, the group's revenue had skyrocketed from about $4 billion to over $100 billion. They'd transformed from a primarily India-focused company to a global giant. What a legacy. But then came the transition to Cyrus Mistry, a member of the Shapoorji Pallonji family, which held a significant stake in Tata Sons. And this is where things get a bit more, complex.
Yes, this is where we start to see the inherent complexities and potential vulnerabilities of the Tata Group's unique ownership structure. Where charitable trusts control the majority of Tata Sons, which is the group's holding company. It's a structure that had served them well for decades. But as they entered this new era of global expansion and complexity, the lines between business decisions and the interests of the trusts, they began to blur.
Sensing some drama ahead. You've got internal power struggles, clashes over corporate governance, the future of one of India's most iconic business groups hanging in the balance. I can't wait to unravel this next chapter in the Tata story. All right, so we're back and the saga continues. We left off with this, this power struggle brewing between Cyrus Mistry and the Tata trusts. So Mistry, he comes in, he wants to consolidate, right? Get their finances in order. He wants to address some of the debt they accumulated during those global acquisitions, and really push for more transparency and accountability. It seems like a pretty sensible approach, especially after a period of such rapid growth.
Yeah, on the surface, it did seem like a relatively smooth transition.
Right, but clearly something went wrong. Was there a particular event, a decision that sort of triggered this conflict with the Tata trusts?
It wasn't so much a single event. I think it was more of a growing disconnect between Mistry's approach and the vision that the Tata trusts had, particularly Ratan Tata, who was still the chairman of those trusts. Mistry was identifying underperforming assets. He was pushing for digital transformation, generally trying to modernize the group's operations. But, behind the scenes, these tensions were simmering.
It sounds like a classic clash of styles, and philosophies.
Yeah.
What were the key, points of friction between Mistry and the trusts?
The differences really centered around strategy, how to prioritize investments, even the role of the trusts in the day-to-day running of the group. Ratan Tata, even though he was retired as chairman, he still had considerable influence through those trusts. And Mistry, perhaps asserting his own authority, wasn't always aligning with their vision. It was a very complex power dynamic.
And this tension ultimately led to that bombshell moment in 2016, right? When Mistry is abruptly ousted as chairman of Tata Sons. I remember it was front page news everywhere. What were the immediate repercussions of that decision? Did it impact investor confidence, the group's public image?
Oh, it was a very public and very messy affair. It definitely shook investor confidence. It created this perception of instability at the top. There were accusations flying back and forth from both sides, legal battles, and for a while, honestly, the future of the Tata Group seemed uncertain.
It must have been a pretty challenging time for everyone involved, right? So after Mistry's removal, Ratan Tata steps back in as interim chairman. What was the strategy for finding a new leader, someone who could navigate these complexities and really unite the group again?
Well, they needed someone who could stabilize the ship, right? Someone who could mend these internal divisions and refocus the group on its core strengths, but at the same time navigate this rapidly changing global landscape. And their choice, Natarajan Chandrasekaran, he was the CEO of TCS at the time.
Chandrak. He had a stellar track record at TCS, so it seemed like a pretty safe and strategic choice. But what were his immediate priorities when he took over in 2017?
First and foremost, he had to bring everyone back together after the mystery saga, rebuild trust within the group, but also with the Tata trusts. He also had to, address some of the challenges that some of their businesses were facing, like Tata Steel Europe, which was really struggling with overcapacity and competition.
So a lot of internal healing and strategic course correction. What were some of the key decisions Chandra made to really steer the group through these turbulent waters?
He took a very pragmatic approach. He consolidated some of their consumer-facing businesses, under Tata Consumer Products. He streamlined operations, pushed for digital transformation across the entire group. And he also recognized the need to invest in the future, so doubling down on things like renewable energy, electric vehicles.
So striking that balance between consolidating existing businesses and then positioning them for future growth. And of course, TCS continued to be their crown jewel.
Oh, absolutely. TCS just kept growing, becoming this $25 billion global giant, cementing its position as a leader in IT services. It's a real testament to the talent they've nurtured within the group and their ability to anticipate and adapt to those technological shifts.
But there were also some pretty bold moves under Chandra's leadership, too. In 2021, they acquired Air India back from the Indian government. It felt like this very symbolic homecoming, right? Bringing the airline back to its roots after being nationalized back in 1953. Was there more to that acquisition than just, nostalgia?
I think so. Acquiring Air India, it was a very strategic move. It allowed them to capitalize on this, the growing Indian aviation market, and leverage the Tata brand's reputation for quality and service. And it was also a signal that the Tata Group, under Chandra, was ready to take on these bold, even nation-building initiatives.
So they're consolidating, they're modernizing, they're making strategic acquisitions. It seems like they were firing on all cylinders. Were there any other notable initiatives or areas that they really focused on during this period?
Well, they've made significant investments in some new areas, particularly in technology and sustainability. They're moving into semiconductor manufacturing through Tata Electronics. They're expanding their digital footprint with things like the Tata Know Super app. And they've made commitments to achieve, net zero carbon emissions by 2045.
Wow, they really are embracing those challenges, those opportunities of the 21st century. It's amazing to see how the Tata Group, even with its long history, its traditions, is constantly evolving. They're not afraid to shake things up, to adapt, to innovate.
And through it all, those core values,
Yeah.
ethical leadership, long-term thinking, and a deep commitment to social responsibility, they haven't wavered. It's really what sets them apart from so many other conglomerates. They're not just focused on profits, they're focused on building a legacy that benefits their shareholders and the communities they operate in. And it really goes back to Jamsetji Tata's vision that business can be a force for good in the world.
It's an inspiring story, and it's far from over. As we wrap up our deep dive into the Tata Group, what are some of the key takeaways or insights that you think, our listeners should really ponder?
The Tata Group, it offers a really compelling case study for what a sustainable, purpose-driven business can look like in the 21st century. Their journey really highlights the importance of adaptability, long-term thinking, and a commitment to values. But it also raises some really important questions. Can their unique trust-based ownership model, can that be a model for others? How do they balance their global ambitions with their, deep roots in India? What's the next chapter in their story? These are all questions worth pondering.
Definitely food for thought. The Tata Group's story, it's a testament to the power of vision, of values, and a belief that business can be a force for positive change. It's an inspiring example of how a company can achieve incredible success while staying true to its principles and making a real difference in the world.
It's a good reminder that business, at its best, can be about so much more than just the bottom line. It can be about building a better future, one where prosperity and purpose go hand in hand.
Well said. That wraps up our deep dive into the incredible journey of the Tata Group, from its humble beginnings in colonial India to its current status as a global powerhouse. We hope you enjoyed the ride.